today on the Investor Tribe podcast, finding off-market deals and talking to sellers. We've talked about it before. We're talking about it again today.
Yes, and you're right. And the deals are out there. And we actually have an expert in the building with us today to actually help us navigate what I would think is the conversation frameworks and scripts that we need to have with different motivated sellers. And this is the instructor and the teacher coming out in me, but I think it's super important. You find a motivated seller. I think the biggest question we get is, what do I say?
You know what another question is?
What?
Who are you and what podcast are we on right now?
I'm Milton Ali.
And I'm Hampton Skurlock.
And we want to welcome you to the Investor Tribe podcast.
Late night grind, got the cash in the flow. Flipping these dreams with the portfolio grow. Brick by brick, stacking wealth in the zone. Investor Tribe, Obs, where the hustle is home.
Today's episode is brought to you by Supreme Lending. They're a local lender. They do investment loans, whether you're a home buyer, an investor, personal service. Tony Williams, Gary Settle, that whole team is great over there at Supreme Lending. You can talk to them for a free quote or get pre-qualified or go to their website at supremelending.com.
Love it. And so we're going to have a lot of conversation today with our special guest, but you know what, man? I got to dip. So I'll see you guys on the flip side of the Investor Tribe and try to keep this guy company while I'm away.
All right. Now, wow, that's amazing. You look a lot younger and, better than my normal co-host, Milton Ali. He had to leave.
Appreciate that.
So I'm fortunate to be here with Kip McCray. So Kip, love you to tell everybody a little about your story, how you found real estate. You've been doing it 5+ years now with the wholesaling and everything. Hate to rehash, but how'd you get started? What are some successes you've had? And I know you're really good at finding deals and talking to sellers. So we're here to try to impart some of that wisdom and give some tips and tricks and some ideas to our listeners.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been doing this for about 5 years now. So it's actually kind of a funny story how I got started. So my buddy Gary actually introduced me to the real estate game. So he told me, hey, man, you might want to try this real estate thing out. And I was just like, well, what is it basically? Like, what do I do? Because I don't got no capital. So what do I need to be doing? And so he was like, all you got to do is find sellers, you got to find buyers, and you can make deals happen. And so I was like, well, shoot. Well, I started watching videos on YouTube about it on a consistent basis all the time. Like, I worked at Teleperformance at the time, so on my break, I would listen to podcasts, and my fiance can attest to this. I would actually fall asleep listening to podcasts every single night, just taking notes and just becoming obsessed with the game. Because that's what you got to do when you get into something. You got to be obsessed with it. And so once I was doing that, I already kind of knew of him, and we already knew each other from our past backgrounds, Jacob Michaels. So I actually met up with him at Manhattan Project when they were having that meetup. And so we were talking and we were trying to figure out ways to collaborate. And so I started cold calling for him. And then once I started cold calling for him, I actually ran across a seller, and when I ran across the seller, it was with a house off of Cane Run Road. It was kind of a weird and interesting call when I first got into it, because I didn't think people would I knew people would be mad when you called them out of nowhere, but this guy was pissed.
Some people are mad, some people are happy, other people may or may not, speak English or want to talk, or you may have caught them at dinner, who knows. But backing up a little bit, you said you worked or you went to a meetup at the Manhattan Project. For those of you that don't know, he didn't, work or go to see where they made the atomic bomb. It's a local, bar event venue here where they hosted a real estate meetup. So no, my producer's like, what's Manhattan Project, atomic bomb? So no, Drew, you didn't work on the atomic bomb. But
no. It was a meetup. And so we collaborated, and I started cold calling for him. And, I've always been an entrepreneur type. Again, I told you, I was walking dog. I was door knocking at the age of 4 years old, trying to walk people's dog for $10. So I knew I could do it. So it was just about actually going out there and doing it. And so when me and Jacob collaborated, I went ahead and started cold calling for him. And when I talked to this seller, I ran across the seller. He had a house off Cane Run Road. When I got on the phone with him, he was aggressive. He said, man, you guys effing call me all the effing time. You guys waste my freaking time. I don't want to talk. And so I was like, hey, I listened to this guy. One of the podcasts I would listen to is this guy named Todd Toback, or videos, because he would talk about how he approaches things with sellers. And he said when the seller goes in a direction, you go the opposite direction to try to do a pull. They call it the pullback method. And so I did a pullback. I said, hey, Mr. Seller, I said, I'm not here to waste your time nor my time. I just need about 5 or 10 minutes to gather some proper condition info. And if you're interested in selling and you think we're a fit, great. If you don't think we're a fit, you can tell me no at any time and I'll leave you alone and I won't bother you again. And so he said, okay, well, I'm willing to talk. And then once we were able to talk, as I told you, I didn't even know what a water heater was. I didn't know what a furnace was. So I didn't ask any of those questions. I just asked what the condition of the property was and I ran with it. So I went.
That's kind of proof that you don't have to know how to build a house. You don't have to be a realtor to be in real estate. There's so many different ways you can make money in real estate. And somebody who used to do some work with me and wholesale, me a couple houses, he said the same thing. He didn't know what a furnace was, what a water heater was. And he asked me, I go, well, the water heater is usually the round one. The furnace is usually the square one.
Sure.
And he asked a seller one time, how old they were. And they said, well, I don't know, neither of them work. And so, then he started learning a little more about the mechanicals. But yeah,
Sure.
you don't have to know all this stuff. You can figure it out as you go.
Yeah. And so that's how it was for me. And so when we went through that process with him, I had to keep running back to get questions from Jacob and go back to him. And then once I went back to him, we were able to negotiate a deal. And we made a deal happen. And he was actually impressed with me, believe it or not. Even though I didn't know what I was doing, I made it sound like I knew what I was doing, because that's how you have to approach. You got to approach it with confidence. And I've always been a salesman at heart. I've sold wristbands, T-shirts. I've sold the whole 9 yards. I've tried to sell. I've even sold seeds before. Believe it or not, I've sold seeds. And I sold $100,000 worth of seeds before.
Wow.
And I didn't even know what I was doing with that. And so when I went through that with him, I think the wholesale fee was like $5,000. I made $2,500. And so when I made that $2,500, I said, okay, this is concept approved. I showed my girl. I said, here, see, I showed you. It's not illegal. I did it the right way. It's a check. And then the guy ended up having another property, and so I negotiated that deal. And both these deals, I was able to talk him down on price. So I was able to talk him down on the other one, and we made money off that one. And then it was kind of the saying here she wrote. It went off from there. And then once it went off from there, and I do want to say this too as well, I wasn't actually even living in Louisville at that time. I was actually living in Columbia, Kentucky, 2 hours away. Near Campbellsville. And so I didn't even see a house in person until my 20th wholesale deal. I never walked through a house. I didn't know what it felt like to go through the house. I'm still not good with budgeting with rehabs to this day. I'm still not excellent expert. I need to get better. And that's one thing I'm working on right now. But I didn't know anything. And I just kind of winged it from that point on. But once we did that deal, we did like 10 other deals with each other, like together. And then I went off on my own, and I started doing it on my own. That's how I met you too. It's funny enough, I actually did a couple deals with you, some of my first deals alone. I actually did with you. I sold you 2 owner finance deals. I didn't even know people around that time were just saying, hey, you need to start. You can't just give a cash off, or you need to get multiple offers. So I said, let me implement that and see what I can do. And my first creative finance deal I actually sold to you off Wilson Avenue. And
couple of them. Those, yeah.
It's actually kind of a sad story with that guy too, because me and that guy actually built a great relationship. His name was Larry. And I was honest. Now I like to be honest with my sellers. I told him I was newer to the game, and he knew that. And most of my sellers knew that at that time. And the thing is that people fail to realize too, with a lot of these sellers, they want you to win. They want you to make money. As long as you're upfront and honest with them, they want you to do good.
And a lot of times you're solving a problem for them and making their life easier.
Exactly. And people want to make it seem it's all about price. It's never about the price. If it's about price, they're not your right client. And that's what people fail to realize when they get in this game too, is they're scared to walk away from deals. Well, unfortunately, not every deal is for you. You have to realize that we have a certain clientele we have to go with. And that's the clientele we have to stick with and roll with. Our clientele are people that are looking to sell as is. They're looking to sell at a discount. and they have some type of stress over them. And sometimes they might not have stress. Sometimes they might just want to make the money, and that's okay. But are they still checking the boxes of our clientele list? Because we can't buy houses retail. You can't wholesale houses retail. If you can, please tell me how to do it, because I'll do it today.
Sometimes you with creative finance may get involved there.
Yeah.
Speaking of finance, that's who with financing. That's one of our sponsor for today is Supreme Lending. So Gary Settle, Tony Williams, their whole team over there at Supreme Lending is great. So you can call and you can get pre-approved. You can see what type of loan products they offer. They loan in Kentucky and surrounding states. They're a great company to work with. And you go to supremelending.com and tell them Investor Trap sent you. They'll take real good care of you. So yes, with wholesaling, you usually can't, buy retail and sell above retail.
Exactly.
So creative finance, you can get a little creative on some things.
And that's my lane. And I sometimes feel even uncomfortable in that lane, but that's my lane. A lot of people, when you get in this game, they say, okay, wholesaling is your entry, but then you need to move on to flips. Then you need to move on to that. I don't think that's always the route that you need to take. I listened to Brent Daniels' podcast a couple months ago, and this guy out of, I think, Massachusetts, and he said it best, that they do $12 million a year in wholesale fees, and all they do is wholesale. They don't even do any fix and flips. They don't even buy any rentals. And so that made me think, like, man, wholesaling is what I do. That's what I love. I'm going to stick with that and just do that. And if I do run across any flips and it happens to be that, I'll do that. But my focus is going to be wholesaling strictly, because that's where my heart is and that's where my business is. And eventually, obviously, I told you I want to get into development and all that. But right now, it's straight wholesale deals. But how I go about, finding these deals, though, is very common way. I cold call. And I used to have a team of 5 a couple years back that would cold call for me and do follow-ups for me, and sometimes even lock up deals for me. And that's what I told you in Milton around that time when I got all them and I had all those people working for me. It was a very stressful environment.
You got pressure on you. You got to provide for them. You got overhead. It's
exactly.
a business, yeah.
And people don't realize that, and it got very stressful. And so I actually quit for 8 months and restarted probably a little bit over a year ago. I restarted. And now I'm kind of a one-man show. I am about to hire another VA on my team. But we're kind of going brick by brick again. And this time I want to do it right, because last time I was doing too much. But this time I'm just focusing, like I told you, on wholesaling. I don't care about the noise. And that's one thing people fail to realize too, coming into this game. But there's a lot of noise. As you know, you've been in real estate a long time, for decades and decades. And I think that's a lot of people's problem when they walk into the door. They overthink the situation. And no, you don't need to overthink. Just do it. Just do it.
And it may not be perfect, but you're making progress. You're learning things as you go. Exactly. You're getting better. You're practicing. You don't learn overnight. I think you helped. There's a learning curve to it, but by you immersing yourself into it, doing the podcast, actually going out there and taking action, it says a lot of it. You got the perseverance. You're beat down, stressed out. You got to move away from it for a bit, and then you came back, and you're coming back, stronger, better, now more knowledgeable than you were when you first started, and you're building back up, like you said, brick by brick, and so that's encouraging.
And people are surprised when I tell them I'm a one-man show, because how many deals I'm doing, and they're surprised about that. But it shouldn't be any surprise, because it's just learning from your mistakes and knowing what you need to do. People, again, overcomplicate it, but as long as every day you're doing something in the business to move your business forward, if it's even making one call a day, just make the call. What's going to hurt? Make the call.
And if you're...
Or door knock or whatever you do.
And I talked with a gentleman last night. He said he was a big procrastinator, and he's like, I don't want to make calls. So how are you going to make money, if you're not making these calls? This is how you get to where you want to go, so you need to just do it.
Exactly.
But he's like, well, I don't know. What are you doing this time tomorrow? I don't know. Block it off. Make an appointment so you don't procrastinate. It's in your calendar. Sometimes you just gotta, bite the bullet and do things, or take these action steps that'll get you where you want to go.
Exactly. This is my method to the madness. The more calls you make, the more leads you get. The more leads you get, the more offers you make. The more offers you make, the more contracts you get. The more contracts you get, the more money you make. So that's my method to the madness. And even I actually learned from a guy out of Florida.
Would you mind repeating that again for those in the back of the? They really need to hear this.
I said the more calls you make, the more leads you get. The more leads you get, the more offers you make, and the more offers you make, the more contracts you get, and the more contracts you get, the more money you make. And so that's very true. A guy actually out of Florida, I think he's out of Fort Long Beach, Florida. His name is Tyler Austin. He owns REI Sift. I use a lot of his methods, and it's very useful methods that keeps me at a budget of under $1,000 a month, but still able to make multiple 5 figures a month. And that's more niche marketing. People think you got to hit 1,000 lists. People think you got to call bankruptcy, then call high equity, then call color violation, then call 10 different lists at once.
Absentee owners, pre-foreclosure, divorces, expired listings.
You can, and at first I thought that. Because that's what you were taught. That's what you watch Max Maxwell or Brent Daniels or all those guys, which all those guys are successful and they know what they're talking about, but they have teams to do those things and they did it brick by brick. Even if you're focusing on one list, I told you my specialty list is probate list. I hit probate on a consistent basis. And the unique thing about our county, Jefferson County, is with Jefferson County, they give you information they shouldn't be giving you. People don't know that, but they do. And it allows me to have a high success rate with that. And then be able to call these sellers and be able to call these sellers with no overhead to call them. No, I don't have to pay to pull the list. I'm pulling the list myself, and I'm pulling the list every single day. And the thing is, people think, oh, that's a lot of work. No, it might be 10 people on the list a day. But that adds up over time because I recycle back through that data. And when I recycle back through that data, I get those leads that I missed, or even at the time, when it first gets released, I'm the first person that talks to them. So they're like, well, you're the first guy. You're the guy I'm going to work with. That happened on several deals so far. They're always tells me, you're the first guy I spoke with. You're the guy I'm working with. And so it helps me a lot, and it creates a bond with the sellers. I actually had a seller. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to close this deal. Sometimes that happens in the game, but you got to be upfront with your sellers and tell them that's a possibility depending on the deal. Unless it's just a sweet deal or it's a common deal that can be sold.
Sometimes there's title issues, there's things that pop up or you don't know about or the seller doesn't know about.
It was found really bad foundation issues, and I didn't know how bad it was. But until I started getting buyers out there and seeing that and having those conversations with the seller, luckily the seller, and the funny thing is the seller was willing to renegotiate. I actually was upfront and honest with me being honest from the beginning. The seller was actually willing to come down on price after we've already signed a contract.
But the foundation issues.
Yeah, the foundation issues.
We'll get back to that in a second. We had an episode a while back that we talked about foundation issues. We had a sponsor come in and Permajack, and the episode was actually called "Don't Laugh, to Jack or Not to Jack." But foundation is such a big, important part of real estate. But another important part is building your foundation, your knowledge foundation, your team, your network, having the forms, having the access to funding, having the lists. So we want you to join the Investor Tribe. All you listeners out there, go to inbtribe.com. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X. We're on Spotify. Going to be on iHeart soon. So look forward to you listen to us every week, and go back and check out the old podcasts. But back to you, Kip, on the finding the deals. You're building the trust. Not all deals get closed, or sometimes you get thrown a curveball with foundations or forgotten about mortgage or a divorce. You get a title that maybe collateral has issues. Mm-hmm. But what do you do? What do you try to do in those circumstances? If you can't salvage a deal, there's just somebody's got to get creative and try to help the sellers out, whatever you can do. But not all deals can just be worked out.
Exactly. So in those situations, I get multiple opinions. I have multiple buyers come out. I have a VIP buyer list. I'm actually working on my dispo process because my buyer list, I was only sending to just a certain amount of people, but now I want to give everybody a chance to get the deal. Because people, that's actually, I'm sorry for kind of going off the ramp with this, but a lot of people fail to realize that this is actually the most important part. It's not even necessarily the finding the seller. It's actually moving the deal. Moving the deal is the most important part of the process. And if you don't have that process down, you could be leaving a lot of money on the table. But back to what you're saying, in those situations, I have multiple buyers come out. I get their opinion. I see, okay, who's going to pay the highest on the deal? And then once I find that out, I say, okay, how fast can you close? So I use that closing timeline as leverage with the seller. I say, hey, Mr. Seller, Mr. Seller, Mr. Seller. I say, hey, I have a deal. I may not have a deal. I have a situation. This is kind of the situation. I bring back up their pain points. I know, this is going on and you have that going on, but, I still want to get this deal closed and I want to be able to allow you to maximize this equity with little to no stress. But with this situation, we're at a situation where we have to come down on price, unfortunately, because we ran into these problems with foundation or whatever it might be. And so with us running into those problems, we are still able to close this deal next Wednesday at 10 a.m., but we will have to come down in price, and this is where we're going to have to be at. And so a lot of sellers, they either give you a yes or no, and even if they give you a no, hey, don't quit. You might have to say, hey, well, what can we do? Just figure it out and just say, what can we do to get this done? Are you willing to at least work with us if we work with you? And just try to negotiate with them and not give up until, you get that consistent no. Even give them a call back a week later. Sometimes you have to. In this seller, in that case with the foundation issue, I actually had to give them a call back 2 weeks later, and they came down another 10 grand. And so I still wasn't able to get the deal to work because I thought I had a buyer, but the buyer just wasn't trying to commit like I thought they were.
And a no today can be a yes tomorrow.
Exactly.
And I've got a story about that. And it's, I bought a house, I think actually from Jacob years ago, and in a good little area of town, and it was a little ranch house, did some work on it. Neighbors came down from a few doors down and said, oh, I love what you've done with the place. We may want to sell ours at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and looked at it, and we talked about it. We hit it off. They had they were football fans, and we kind of saw what price we paid for that house. That I could pay more for their house because it was in better shape.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, what if I have that? If you give me that money and you let me live in an RV in the backyard. I hadn't really thought about that or been presented with that. I heard a lot over the years.
Right.
A lot of serious, a lot of off the wall things.
Yeah,
but he wanted to just sell his house and live in an RV. He didn't know those rules against it in our county. We're a bigger city, so they're not real RV friendly. And if you do have one, it's got to be in your backyard or behind the house or in a garage. They say you can't live in them permanently in our county. So that wasn't something that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I followed up with him, and it was 3 years later that he said yes.
Uh-huh.
And
that's crazy.
I offered him more money at that time because the house had gone up, and we were able to buy his house, get him the money, let him stay there for 30 days so he could go buy the RV after we got it closed, and then he moved up to Michigan. So he'd actually lost a leg, had some health issues, and so an RV was ideal because he could still drive and get around. He didn't have any exterior maintenance over the house, had to mow grass. And so it had a happy ending. He was excited. We got a good deal on a house. He got to move and be with his wife and travel around and have a paid for RV and some pocket money to live off of for a bit. But it was a little over 3 years of follow up and stopping to visit occasionally if I was in the area or send out a postcard and just built that rapport. And he was ecstatic that we gave him more money than we offered, but it was only fair. It was 3 years later, the values had gone up.
Yeah, sometimes you can't be greedy. And that's the thing with it. I tell a lot of people about this when I go in and speak about this game, is that it's really about follow-up. That's the king. That's the real juice that these gurus sometimes try to hide from you. It's all about follow-up and being consistent with your seller. I actually sold a deal to Joe Worth, probably a little bit over about 6 months ago, I think, maybe. And he's just now selling it, but he's making good profit on it. I made decent profit on it. Actually, I didn't make that decent. It was actually not the best for me, at least, because I have high standards. But I made something, though, and I was able to help the sellers. That's the main thing you want to do. There's going to be more deals. But with that deal is that their mom passed away about 5 years ago or something like that. and they were going through probate and everything, and it was a long process through probate. But people need to know this too, though. With probate, you can actually sell during the probate process in the state of Kentucky. But with them, I think it was more of an emotional attachment versus wanting to sell. And so with that attachment, I had a 2-year follow-up with them. And with that 2-year follow-up, during that 2-year follow-up, I probably talked to them about 10 to 15 times, I think, 10 to 15 touches, because it was kind of spread it out. It wasn't all in like 1 month type of thing, but it was all spread it out. And so I talked to him for about 2 years. He finally said, "We're ready to move forward, Kip. And, you've been calling me for 2 years now. I know you from a first name basis, know your voice, know who you are. Never met him in person, but, we always talked on the phone." And so he said, "Man, I think we're ready to move forward. Can you come out and let's have a conversation?" Usually, I used to do the virtual model, but now I do a little bit since I moved back to Louisville. I go out and meet with sellers just to kind of, build the brand and, build more of a face presence in the market. And so I went out, spoke with them, and with me just doing that 2-year follow-up, I was able to talk them down, 5 to 10 grand. And I was able to build that connection for them to be able to move forward right away. And he had other buyers on the table that were willing to pay more money. But he said he liked the fact that I stuck with him for 2 years because people would call him, but never call him ever again.
And by the time he's ready to sell, they may not be in business. They may not be around anymore. And I have a little epiphany here. What you do, you talk about, you're persistent.
Yeah.
You're also consistent. So you're consistently persistent. And if you can be those two things, you'd be real successful, with the wholesaling business and following up. But what other advice, would you give, to new investors, who are afraid of talking to sellers face to face?
Start virtual.
Okay. That's what you did. Yeah.
Start virtual. If you're not willing to go face to face with them, just start virtual. And because you got to think with a phone call, once you hang up, you can never, it's just whatever at that point. But start virtual. I always tell people to start driving for dollars. Again, you don't have to focus on just calling a whole bunch of lists or focused on any type of thing. Anything you do can get you a deal. Any list you call can get you a deal. There's no magical list. There's no magical script. There's no magical anything. It's just being, like you said, persistent and consistent with what you're doing. Because some people get lucky in this game, and their first call might be a deal.
Yeah, they may make $75,000, and then they think they're set for life.
Exactly.
And they stop and they get away, or they lose the motivation.
Exactly. And and you do lose motivation in this game. Don't get me wrong, because but you got to be used to hearing 1,000 no's to get to that one yes. And that's what people fail to realize. Even if you're not the best talker and you're not the best negotiator, you have to go out. You still have to go and be consistent, and you'll get better and more confidence over time. And once and I record my calls. So if you record your calls, you can listen back to your calls. Like, okay, I did this wrong. And so with our sales process, we actually have a checklist. And so we make sure we hit our checklist. We have a system called TARP. I actually learned it from a couple up in Columbus, Ohio.
TARP.
Yeah.
Okay.
They actually came and spoke at Korea before. They're out of Columbus, Ohio. But I actually learned that method.
Josh and Tiffany?
Yeah, Josh and Tiffany. Yeah, I actually paid $20,000 to learn this. So I paid a lot of money to learn it. But I learned it, and it was a good learning experience. I feel like I was a little bit young to go through that course because I wasn't that mature, I feel like, and consistent at that point. But I did go through it. And so it's basically a system to make sure you're checking all your boxes. And that's part of the system. And it's timeline, agenda, result, and permission to say no. You do all those things and you check those boxes. And also motivation. Obviously, you want to see what their motivation is and what their reasoning and why are they even wanting to sell. And you want to dig deep. And again, if it's your clientele, you go deeper in discussion about that. But when I speak to these sellers, I remember TARP. So I enter the call. I say, "Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I say, "Hey, how are you doing today?" They usually answer back, "I'm doing good. Who's this?" And I say, "This is Kip. The reason I was calling today is I was actually reaching out about a property on 123 Main Street. And I said, okay, what about it? I'm like, okay, so the reason I was calling about it is I was reaching out, actually seeing if there was any interest in wanting to sell it right now or possibly even in the near future. You see how I threw in that near future is because if they don't want to sell now, shoot, they might want to sell in the future. And if they do want to sell in the future, let me put them down in my CRM or put them down in my notebook and put a reminder to call them here in the next, X amount of time they need me to reach back out. Because a lot of times with these probate deals, they might not be ready at that time. They might have belongings they didn't go through or situations, because a lot of people with the probate list, they give up on it because it's a lengthy time period sometimes to get the deal done, or they feel like they're not getting the action. But the action is there. It's the follow-up that gets you action.
And different people have different timelines, and
it's emotional
differently.
And it's an emotional attachment. It's their parents or grandparents or brother or sister's house, and you got to respect that. You know what I mean? And if you're respectful about that and honest with them about the process, they're willing to talk to you. But when I go through that process, they tell me, when they tell me yes, I say, okay, well, great. Well, I basically break down our sales process of what it will look like, what it'll look like going through this process. Where I say, okay, great. Well, do you have about 5 or 10 minutes to where I can go over some property condition info, like the age of the roof, age of the HVAC system. And then after that, what I could do is take that back to my partner and see what the property qualifies for. After we see what the property qualifies for, I can come back with an offer. All we ask is you're able to make that confident yes or no decision. And with that yes or no, if we're able to move forward, great. If we're not, no big deal. You can always tell me no. You will not hurt my feelings. At least we both know what our options look like. Is that fair? And they usually, say yes, or they tell me, well, I might not be able to make a yes or no decision, which that's very important to know, because you don't want to, with making calls, you don't want to waste no time. Every call counts, so you got to make sure you're on the phone with a person that's ready to do business today. And if they're not ready to do business, figure out the reason why they're not ready to do business, because it could be something small that you could fix for them and that's stopping you from moving, or because it could be something like, oh, I don't want to clean out the house right now. I'm not looking to keep anything, but I don't want to clean it out. It's trash in there. I don't want to be bothered with it. But if you can let them know, hey, we clean it out. We clean it out for you. How about if we buy it with everything in there? Oh, well, then, yeah, we'll talk to you.
Or you can come get about the things you want.
Exactly.
We'll deal with the rest of the stuff. Stuff you want to do.
Exactly.
Stuff you don't want to deal with, we'll deal with it.
Exactly.
But you can do that. In this business, you can solve a problem. You can listen and hear what people want, or sometimes we're even asking them, other than price, what is the ideal transaction? If we could, if we could buy this property, what does the ideal transaction look like? And sometimes they're just dumbfounded by the question, because they're thinking, oh, we go to closing, we get money.
Exactly.
But when some people think about it, they think, oh, well, I'd like a month to go through it and make sure I get all the sentimental items out. Anything of value. I know Dad had a gun somewhere around here. I want to find that. I don't want to get hurt. So I got to get with my uncle in another county because we got to move this pinball machine that's in the basement.
Yep.
And you hear these things, you're like, well, I can help with a storage unit. I may know people that have movers. We know a moving company that actually been a sponsor of the podcast before. So we've worked them into deals where we help people move these things and deal with these problems.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden you're able to get a deal done a lot quicker, or eliminate all the reasons they can say no or not yet, and turn them into yeses. Exactly.
And the one thing too with this sales process, with doing that too as well, it kind of gets the movers and shakers out of the way, because sometimes you might have people that aren't even looking to sell. They just want to hear an offer, and at that point they're a waste of time. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying don't follow up with them in the future. Because I'm going to tell you something else that people need to be doing that a lot of people don't do, that they're missing out on a lot of money. But when I'm going through that process and I go through that allows the seller, the sales, because everybody always has this perspective of salespeople. And so that gets them to bring down their wall and allow them to, okay, now I can open up. I can say no. I can say no to this person if I don't want to do business. I'm not scared to walk away if I don't want to do anything, or they're not pressuring me into doing something, because you don't want to pressure anybody. And that's what the whole method of the pullback is about, is that you want to, because if you pull back, people are like, no, I do want to sell, but this is da. And but when I'm going through that process, we go into it. The first thing I do after, they say, yes, that's fair, or yeah, I'm willing to move forward with that, is that I go straight into motivation. I say, what has you considering wanting to sell at this time. And I always want to throw in that considering or thinking about selling is because you don't want to say, what has you wanting to sell? Because it makes them like, well, who said I wanted to sell? Or, you know what I'm saying? It makes them feel like, but I go into that and I go into that discussion with them, and they might tell me, for example, let's say with probate, let's say they had their dad passed away, and they're going through probate. Their dad passed down the house, and they just don't want to be bothered with it. I then go into that discussion with them. You don't want to be bothered. There's a technique that they teach too, is mirroring the seller. Like, okay, you don't want to be bothered with it. I'll mirror them, or I might say, how long have you been dealing with this, or what has you not wanting to deal with it? Why not just hold on to it, clean it up, and list it with a realtor, or list it for rent. And
put a little money into it.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to go through those discussions, because that's what you're going to need to be able to negotiate with these sellers, is you're going to need to know those pain points. I'm not saying, and I don't want to sound like a bad person when I'm trying to say that, use their pain to make your pockets full. But no, you need to know that information, because you need to know how you're going to be able to solve their problem, because at the end of the day, you do got to be paid for what you do. And so you need to know how you need to solve their problem. So,
but you need to listen and kind of identify the problem,
exactly,
and then figure out how to solve it. So
exactly,
you're everybody benefits from the transaction. You're
exactly,
with the problem. You're helping them move on with life.
Right.
Maybe put some money in their pocket, or get rid of some headaches.
Yeah.
So we real estate isn't always roses and rainbows.
Exactly.
But we are able to help a lot of people, and in a variety of ways. So it's pretty amazing business. There's so many things you can do. I really appreciate having you out today. We've covered quite a bit. I know we're a little over on time here now, but I'm Hampton Scurlock, and you can catch us on the flip side of the Investor Tribe.
The Investor Tribe podcast is brought to you by the Investor Tribe, all rights reserved, featuring Hampton Scurlock and Milton Aldi, executive producer Drew Cookenmaster, produced and distributed by Bespoke Marketing.